About this tile knockoff wastegate I received. I normally don't buy knockoff stuff. Um, I'm not really a big fan of it, but I was kind of convinced by a few friends that that the quality of these are good. That they've come a long way. I'm not convinced, but we're gonna take it apart and we're gonna see if it's any good. So I mean, I think it was like $129. So it was, I mean, decently priced. I don't like the fact that it does really have the tile name on it, and it's even embossed in the side of the wastegate. But I mean, exterior-wise, it does look okay as far as quality goes. The anodizing is pretty decent on it. The machining looks pretty good except for cleanup. So the machining actually looks decent on this. Where the threads come through the lower plate, you can see that they didn't clean up. There's some, slag or whatever you want to call it, sticking out there. I wish that would have gotten cleaned up. If there's some differences between the real tile. I mean, the top here, because I have a real tile, but I needed another one. So what better opportunity than to compare them? So I've looked at my real tile and seen the difference between the real tile and the remake. These are MVRs. They're 44 millimeter wastegates. The top here, right where the this port is, it's squared off on a real tile. It's round on this replica. And then above all the ports here, they actually label air, water. It says H2O and air on the real tile. Hardware all seems to be really similar, like super similar. Even these clamps. Now, I've seen some videos about these, and I've seen that these clamps, they say that on the replicas or the whatever you want to call them, counterfeits or whatever, that the clamps here are really garbage compared to the tiles. I mean, this looks darn near the same. As far as quality, I don't really see anything wrong with these. I have seen some others in videos that were absolute junk, but these are actually pretty good. I've fit them up already, checked them. Everything looks actually pretty good on those. One thing a lot of people overlook when they get a tile or a remake is if you're going to use the water ports to water cool this, which I'm going to cool both my wastegates, you have to put these little set screws in. These little set screws in the bag here, they actually go in right here. If you guys can see that, I'm having a hard time messing with the camera in this. So there's two set screw holes right here, one right there and one right there. So you got to screw those in. And I highly recommend using Loctite. Now, on my tile wastegate, I had a problem with my actually, real tile wastegate. I was having some overboosting issues, and it couldn't control. I mean, this is right out of the box. It couldn't control the boost pressure. So what I found is, anytime you get a wastegate, knock off, real, doesn't matter, open it up. When I got mine, it appeared that tile did not tighten the screws, the set screws that hold the diaphragm to the actual valve. And so what ended up happening was it started leaking. I started getting air leaking. The pressure goes in the bottom, forces the diaphragm up inside where the spring goes. I had screws just laying in there, and so it basically caused a big leak. And so every time I would, start to boost, we'd hear air coming out of the top of the wastegate. So, well, you wouldn't hear it, but that's what would happen. Air would come out of the top of the wastegate. So, what we're going to do now is I'm going to try to set the camera aside here, and I'm going to pop this guy apart. So you got to put some force down on the top of this because there is a spring in there, and so you got to hold this apparatus down while you loosen the screws. I already pre-loosened them all, just a little bit. Now I just got to unscrew them. So, well, you don't want to just take screws out because the spring pressure, as the screw loosens, is going to tear the threads off the screws, and you're going to ruin it. So you want to put a little pressure down, rotate it until you can get all 6 screws. I believe there's 6 screws here, yeah. Out. And screw them. There we go. There we have it. It is up and open. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is pull the top off. You can see the spring there. I'm just going to flip this over, flip the topper over and look inside. Get all the screws up. Alright, so the inside here actually looks pretty decently machined. I don't see a lot of slag, nothing, no mess inside there. It's anodized pretty decently. This is probably one of the highest quality remakes I've seen. It's real smooth compared to a lot of the ones I've seen on the internet. So you got a spring. Now here's the screws. See that set screw? There's 3 of them on this particular one. And those are the 3 screws that are extremely critical to this wastegate functioning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them out because I bet you they're not even tight, and I bet you there's no Loctite. That was super loose. This is the first time I've torn this one down. I haven't torn it down before. So that was super duper loose. See this one? Oh my God. That was not tight at all. I know loosening the other one might have put less tension on this one, but it wasn't even, there was nothing there. We'll take the last one out. Alright. That was not tight either. So we got those 3. There's no Loctite on them, no nothing. Pull the diaphragm off. Now we're going to take a look at the diaphragm. This actually looks pretty decent. I don't see any holes, tears. Don't feel any metal shavings inside. Actually, impressed. Nothing wrong with this diaphragm that I can see. Feels nice and soft. Looks like it's good. Now inside here, you can see what else down. Okay. Now I always like to feel. I don't know if you can hear that on the camera. It's catching. And this shaft, as you can see inside here, if you can see that in the camera, but it's greased up. There's a lot of grease on there, quite a bit. But you can hear it just dragging. Okay. It's easy to fix. And I've had this same issue with a real tile. um, where it just had a little slight drag. But this is excessive. On this one, it's a little excessive. So also, you'll see these 3 screws here. These 3 screws hold the bottom plate to the body, and you can see they have this white sealant. So typically, this should be Loctited. The screw should be Loctited, and then you put a little bit of silicone to seal it, so that air pressure from your turbo, from your boost pressure, can't leak through the threads. It's a minor little detail, but it does make a little difference. And this one's sealed. I'm just going to check how tight these screws are. This is a 3mm. Yeah, it feels pretty tight. Yep. Okay, so those are nice and tight. They got an O-ring here. There's a little O-ring that seals it, and you can see that's visible. The outside of the stem, the guide, the valve guide, is greased here. That's because that inside surface slides on that. Slides up and down, so it's got to be lubricated. I'm not sure what type of grease they use. I usually use a really high temp moly grease to lube those up, and it seems to do pretty well. I haven't had any valve seize on me, but this one's definitely going to seize at some point. So I'm going to leave these 3 screws alone because they're tight and they got some sealant on it. And one thing to look out for, because my Tial had the same thing, the 3 screws were sealed, and they put too much sealant on there and they didn't wipe the excess off, just like they did here. But the bottom of the diaphragm here can get that sealant on it. And when the bottom of the diaphragm gets sealant on it and it's pretty much glued to the bottom here, it can't flex. So it won't open as far as it should. So you got to make sure you check that. It's sad that you got to take a brand new product, Chinese, counterfeit, or legit made in the USA Tial, but you should take it apart and double check it. Because this one's pretty tight. And yes, it does move up and down, and yes, it would move, but once you get some carbon in there and everything, it's going to start to drag, and you're going to start to have inconsistent boost control, and we want to eliminate that from the get-go. We want that to go in and out smooth, but not have any excessive shaft play. So I'm moving this back and forth. There's a little bit if I push hard, but I think that's because I'm deflecting the seal here at the end. But we're going to pop the valve face out. Oh my gosh, there we go. It took a little bit of force to push that through. Here's the valve face. See how it fits on the fire ring. See, the fire ring has this concave seat that this has to sit on, just like that. So what I typically do, you hold it up and line it up and try to see if you see any. It looks like it seats pretty good because I don't see any light through it. You can always blue it and clean that up. I don't really think it's that necessary. Overall, the valves looks pretty darn good, but we've got to do something to clean this up. So I'll show you what we do. This is the best way I've found of doing this. I'll go ahead and just put the grease back in there. Don't waste it. Clean the valve off. Alright, valve's all clean. Now, I'm going to show you what we're going to do here. We're going to go back into the shop, and we're going to chuck this up in the drill the drill press. Alright, so we got our drill press. There it is. If I got it chucked straight, it'll spin even. Looks like it to me. Alright, so we're going to use, I got just some regular old 400 grit wet or dry sandpaper. Just a couple strips here. Okay. You can use some Mega Cut, some cutting fluid if you want. It's not really necessary. It will shine it up a little nicer, but it's not really necessary. So I'm just going to do it without it. We're just going to pop this up here. I'm going to go ahead and grab it with one hand and the other. And as that drill press spins, we're just going to hold this here just like that. You can kind of move it up and down, left and right. Just make sure you're getting every bit of it. Nice and shiny. And it looks all nice and shiny, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to take that valve out. And you can clearly see where we sanded it on the very top of the valve stem, which this is pretty much where it rides inside. So you got to pop it up all the way up through here. We're going to put the grease back on a little bit here and there. So take the excess here, reach inside and get it back on that shaft in there. Okay, now look how much smoother this runs. Still a little drag, still a little bit, but it's moving much better. There's about probably 3/4 less drag. And there's still no shaft play in it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to chuck it up in the drill press again, and I'm going to take just a little bit more off until the shaft can just pop in and out real easy. Because we want the spring, and we want our boost controller, we want that to do the job. Any drag in this valve going in and out is going to make it harder for us to control the boost. So we need this thing smooth, cycling in and out. So we're going to go and chuck it back up. All right, let's give this a shot. All right, throw it back in. Need to grease that guy. Let's just go ahead and throw some of my high temp moly grease. Just get on my finger and go ahead and slap a bunch of it there. Let's go ahead and slap some in the inside the valve guide. Get this out of the way. Go ahead and slide that guy Right back in there. Okay. Wipe the grease off my finger. Alright, now let's see how smoothly it runs. So we get some grease up in there. Look at that. Almost here, absolutely no abrasion. I mean, it just rolls right in and out pretty smoothly. So that is a very important thing to do on these wastegates, whether it's real or it's a replica or a counterfeit or whatever you want to call them. Make sure the shaft slides nice and smooth with no resistance. Excuse me. Then I usually put this all the way up, the valves all the way up. I grease where the diaphragm's going to ride on. Put a little more in here. A little more right here. We don't want anything seizing up in there. Drop that on top. Now it's time for our set screws. We got the little set screw here. Red Loctite. I don't even bother with blue. So now we're just going to double check, look inside here and make sure, push on the valve, make sure we're all the way down on that diaphragm, because those set screws do have to ride right in that groove. And now we're just going to go ahead and give them a crank. With that red Loctite in there, these screws are not going to come out. You're not going to have a ruined day. If you've ever taken your wastegate off and you shake it and you hear a little rattling inside, that's what it is. The screws fell out. Get them nice and tight. They're all nice and tight. Now I take a rag, wipe off the excess Loctite. Okay. Now, a very critical step when reassembling the wastegate is to make sure this diaphragm goes into the groove, and when you put the top on, to make sure you don't pinch the diaphragm. A lot of people pinch the diaphragm, and I mean a lot. If you pinch the diaphragm, the wastegate's going to get stuck. It's not going to open, and you're going to have a bad day. So I usually just set this down nice and neat and just run my fingernail kind of around the outside lightly until it sets in place. Then I fully seat the valve down. Keep making sure to push it down around the edges. I guess we're done with the Loctite. There we go. Now, this came with 3 springs. This came with a big spring. Came with this spring. And it came with that guy. So there are 3 springs. We can use it interchangeably or use them all 3 together to get different pressures out of it. But my engine management system with a 4-port MAC valve is going to control both wastegates. I'm not sure which one's the lightest spring here. I'll have to test it. Interchange them and test them to see what their spring pressures are. But I will do that after I reassemble it. So now, I want to make sure to put this together. Same thing, you got to hold it down nice and tight. So I want to get this lined up, get it seated. Okay. Drop all your little screws in. missing a step. Those set screws for our water ports, they need to go in. I mean, we could put them in after we tighten this down too, but now one trick, because it's not exactly obvious, but these two screw holes here, right here and right there, right down there, they're not straight, so they're not completely perpendicular to the surface. They're actually cut in at an angle like this. So when you put them in, if you try putting them in perpendicular, like at this angle right here, you're never going to get it in there. So it's at almost like a 37-degree angle that they got these in here. So just put some Loctite on them, run them all the way in. I have no idea why they don't do this process of putting these screws and Loctiting them at the factory. I don't know why they don't Loctite and tighten these screws at the factory. It's not that much of a step. And you know what? If you, oh, that was a little much. If you ruin the diaphragm trying to get these screws out, right? Because you red Loctited them and it got really tight there and it's pretty much seized on there. If you break them, I mean, it's not the end of the world. You can cut this off and get another $40 diaphragm. You're good to go. So, I mean, there's no reason not to Loctite them. I've never not been able to get Loctited screws or bolts out anyways, even with red thread locker. Usually you just warm it up a little bit and then use a little bit of force, and usually they come right free. Sometimes in aluminum you can tear the threads, but if you do, like I said, it's a $40 diaphragm. It's not the end of the world. If you're taking it apart at the racetrack and putting it back on, that would suck, because you really wouldn't have any way to fix it. Okay, so we got those two in. Let's go ahead and get this on. Okay, you don't want to tighten all these down. Get them, a couple of them in. Get like two, maybe two on each side, or you know, get at least half of the screws in on opposite sides, right? Then run the screws down. Now you got to look inside here, because inside here, hopefully the camera can see here. You can see the orange or / red lip. See, there's like a little lip in the diaphragm. Well, where it goes into the upper top is where it can actually get hung up. So you have to watch that as you tighten it down. And if need be, you can use a little flathead like this and just very gently, just give it a little push to where it slides in there. Because if you pinch it, it's not going to open, or it's not going to open up enough. You are going to overboost. So I usually go around a little bit at a time. Just make sure it's not getting pinched at all. I'm not going to Loctite these outer screws here. They need to be serviced a lot. So these screws will come off if I change springs. So I'm not gonna Loctite these, as I might take them on and off 4 or 5 times. So once I got got it all the way down, start tightening them up, just snugging them up. And there you have it. So whether you have a legit tile or you have the knockoff, those two process, these things that we've done here, they're critical to both. So you always want to Loctite those screws on the inside, Loctite these 2 water port screws, and make sure to clean up the valve, because if it's not going to go in and out smoothly, you're going to have a bad day. And you're not going to have predictable boost control. Even if you set your boost controller duty cycle to make up for the drag you're having on the valve, that drag's going to change over time. If you get carbon up in the seat, up in there, which will happen, it can get worse, and then you have to constantly change the how you have it set, and it's not good for consistency. And if it gets bad enough, you could lose an engine. So you can see here, it goes in and out real nice and easy, and the sound you heard was a good sound, because as I compressed the valve in, the diaphragm was lifting, and that was displacing the air inside the top here and blowing it out here. So that's it. Actually, after looking at the tile, after having my own tile and having the same minor problems with it, honestly, quality-wise, they look pretty similar. They really are. But there's no doubt about it. This thing's a knockoff. If I run it on my car, I'm not trying to fool anybody. That I got a Tial Wastegate, because this definitely isn't a Tial Wastegate. It is a knockoff. It is a known counterfeit serial number. With that said, it's actually pretty damn good. Alright guys, so that's what you got to do to a knockoff tile. And I'll put a link to the eBay listing that I bought this from, because out of all the eBay videos I started watching after I bought this, and I started to have a little bit of remorse before it even arrived, this is far above the quality of all the other ones I've seen.